Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my 2023 library tour, and I have moved house. I am no longer living on the floor, even though the next shelf I'm going to deal with is a floor shelf. I tested this out ahead of time because I'm always thinking about my imaginary BookTube friends, and I didn't want it to be awkward. I didn't want me to be constantly bobbing in and out of the frame like that. This channel is awkward enough as it is. But it turns out that with a little bit of reaching and stretching, I can reach the books on this bottom shelf without getting down on the floor. So that's what we're going to do. The problem with the bottom shelves of the previous bookcase is that they were double and triple stacked. That's not true here. We're back to a custom-made Steve Donahue bookshelf here. So the first book that we have to deal with is this lovely thing here. A.C. Spektorsky edited this thing. This was done in the, Mark would know, 1950s? 1954, yes, this is the Book of the Sea. Lovely thing. Full of etchings, black and white photos, all kinds of things. Just all sorts of lore and legend of the sea. I've seen this before, but I've never seen such a pretty edition, and that one that somebody had already put a covering on. So when I saw this one, I grabbed it. I love going through it. There are a couple of books like this, but I love anthologies like this anyway, that are big and ranging about the sea, where I have spent an enormous amount of time. I always talk about the places where I've lived, but I've spent an enormous amount of time living on the oceans of the world. So big anthologies about the sea and various stories, even though they can be a little predictable, they still thrill me. Okay, then we have another one. Oh my god, it's huge. This is Reclaiming History by Vincent Bugliosi. His enormous book about the Kennedy assassination, where he goes through, first he does a minute by minute, a second by second reconstitution of the events in Dealey Plaza. And then he goes through everything written about the Kennedy assassination. Every theory, all the workings of the Warren Commission, all of it, all the separate ideas, for every aspect of it, eyewitnesses, dictabel recordings, the wanderings and crimes of Lee Harvey Oswald, everything, just the autopsy protocols at the hospital, all that sort of stuff, gives through it all. And in addition to the book, there's also a CD in the back with twice as much information. It's an absolutely mind-bogglingly huge and exhaustive treatment of this subject. And it's done for a point. I don't think that a book like this should ever be. I think if you go into history with a point, if you go into the writing of a book of history with a point, you're doing something that's not quite writing history. But the point here was that Bugliosi wanted to vindicate the conclusion of the Warren Commission, which was that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in the murder of John F. Kennedy and Officer Tippit. And sure enough, that's the conclusion that he comes to at the end of the book. It's really, really entertaining reading. Any of you who've ever read Bugliosi's big breakout book was Helter Skelter. Any of you who've ever read that, you might have been horrified by the actions that you were seeing in that book. But you will probably remember that you really enjoyed the reading experience. Same thing is true here. Reclaiming History is, when it's all done, text and disc, it's probably 3,700 pages long, but it is really, really good, really readable. And whether or not you agree with the author's conclusions, well, that's going to be up to you. Is he being too cavalier? Is he being too brusque in dismissing literally every quibble about the JFK assassination? That's going to be for you to decide. Okay, then we have, looks like a row of these great old productions that National Geographic used to do. You'll see these at yard sales, and you might pass right over them, but you really shouldn't. They are enduringly wonderful. You will read through one, and then you'll go back to it over and over again. I go back to these all the time. These big National Geographic books on history. This one is the Renaissance. And they're oversized, and they are full of National Geographic style photographs of people, but also all of the artwork is reproduced as well. See there in detail. And this takes you through also original artwork. Takes you through different aspects of the subject. This is not meant to be a soup to nuts narrative history. Instead, it takes you through, let's see what the, do we have a table of contents here? You National Geographic folk. Are you going to give me a table of contents? Well, there's a huge roster of people who took part in this thing. No, you are not going to give me a table of contents, you bastard. All right, you're not going to do that, but that's all right. This takes you through the hits, basically. The hits. This takes you through Leonardo da Vinci, the Medicis, Machiavelli, that sort of thing. It's not, in other words, it's not groundbreaking, but they are so enjoyable to read, these big National Geographic production numbers. I have a lot of them. I wish I had more of them. You'll often see right there, you'll see a whole bunch of them that they made, and I just wait for them to show up at the used bookstores or yard sales or library sales or the Brattle, because they do regularly. People don't recognize them for the treasure that they are. This one is Greece and Rome, and has, in addition to maps and photographs and there's fold-out stuff here, fold-out map of the wanderings of Alexander the Great. In addition to all that, I want to show you if I can find an example. These things also have something that National Geographic has sometimes, even today, which is, there we go, which is original artwork. There we go. Done in consultation with the historians who were on the staff for these things, so they're reasonably accurate, but they are also delightful period pieces. This is a big volume on wild animals of North America, with a grizzly bear and 2 cubs on the back there, and a whole bunch of grizzly bears on the back. And this also will have, there are tracks, so you know what you're looking at in the snow. There are high definition black and white and color photographs, and there's also original artwork. Look at that, a flying squirrel. That is lovely, absolutely lovely. Of course, the one on wild animals of North America is a bit more of a showcase than the others, because that's right over the plate for a National Geographic specialty. Nature is what they do. That's by far the largest number of on-staff artists that they had at the time, on-staff experts. So it's in many ways the strongest book, although it's not my favorite. My favorite is this one, Men, Ships, and the Sea, which is an unbelievable National Geographic volume. Just unbelievably, here we go. Look at all of those. I have the birds in a 2-volume box set. I have the Wonderlands of America in a 2-volume box set. I don't have the England volume, and I don't have the Chivalry volume. I wish that I had both of those. And I haven't seen the Bible volume in forever. Not in forever. But this Men, Ships, and the Sea is really a great volume. Look at that. Look at that clipper ship. A load of canvas on there. That was what you did. That was what ships did as they more and more tried to maximize the amount of horsepower that they would get out of the wind. The array of sail became greater and greater, and taller, more and more extensive. And you can tell when you look, in retrospect, you can look at these pictures, these designs, and tell, well, the next step will be that you're not relying on the wind at all. The next step will be that you move to internal power, not waiting on the, not sucking every last ounce of joule energy out of the wind this way. And that is what happened. This book, there are a whole bunch, an endless number of books about books. Books about the sea, nautical books about, sailing and ships and sea and whatnot, and this is one of my favorites. Out of all of those, one of my favorites. And then, well, I probably should have said that was my favorite, because I'm kind of duty-bound when it comes to this. This is man's best friend. This is the National Geographic volume that they did on dogs, which is full of photographs, but also full of original artwork. There's a sheepdog walking on the backs of sheep. And I'm sure that if I dig around in this book, once upon a time, for years and years and years, any dog book, the AKC dog book, Dog World, Dogs of the World, Man's Best Friend, whatever it was, I would automatically turn to the page on beagles. Automatically. Because those of you who are new to the channel, or maybe even not so new, forever I had beagles. They were synonymous with me. And I had lots of them at a time, usually. And so that was the first place that I went. It is amazing to me now that I go somewhere else, that I go to the miniature schnauzer. Never in a million years would I have thought Although the miniature schnauzer is peace-loving by nature, long, powerful jaws and a strongly muscled body equip him to take care of himself in a scrap. His harsh, wiry coat is a characteristic pepper and salt color. And as is true with National Geographic, when they weigh in on all things natural, they're entirely right. I had never had a dog as small as Frida before. She's 10 pounds. I'd never had a little dog before. And I had all the usual ideas about what it would be like to own a little dog. I thought, well, they might be delicate. They're probably prone to disease. And you'll have to be hyper cautious on the dog walk. My pointer, Malin, had some size on her. And my basset hound, Lucy, bless her, she was completely insane and didn't have a hostile bone in her body, and she was also invulnerable to harm. She was encased in seal blubber, and another dog couldn't hurt her if they tried. A couple of them actually managed to get past Malin and try it, and they couldn't even hurt her, not in the slightest. So I naturally assumed this would take, and my beagles were always together, and nothing. A coordinated pack of dogs. There's no need to worry about a coordinated pack of dogs. But I thought, oh, I'm going to have to ramp up my attention here until Frida grew to her full size and became an adult at about a year old. And then I realized she's as strong as an ox and completely fearless and also incredibly fast. So I don't really worry all that much about my little baby. What is this next one? Oh, okay. This is a great book. A lot of you will know The Sword and the Stone from the old Disney cartoon movie. And maybe you had an individual book of The Sword of the Stone by T.H. White when you were a kid. And the Sword and the Stone is one part of the 4 parts that make up The Once and Future King. One of the great fantasy novels of all time, one of the great novels of the 20th century. And there was a 5th part, and that's the Book of Merlin, in which an old King Arthur attends a conference under the ground. Once there was a hole. I was a hobbit who lived in a hole in the ground, but that was not that, but that was this. He attends a conference conducted by his old tutor Merlin, the magician, and a whole bunch of animals: a snake, a goat, a badger, famously a hedgehog, a dog, and they debate on the worth of humankind. They debate on whether or not humanity is a salvageable animal, and it is an unbelievably beautiful book. Much as I love The Once and Future King, this is an unbelievably beautiful book. So I grab copies of it when I see them. So this next one is really thin, whatever it is. Oh, okay. Wow, this doesn't belong here. This is by Eve Bunting with illustrations by David Christiana. This is my favorite kids' book. I Am the Mummy, Heb Nefert, which is the story of the title character, a young woman in ancient Egypt, who is affianced to the prince. To her shining prince. She dances before him in the dawn of time, thousands of years ago. She wears a cone of scented wax on her head that melts in the heat and acts as a kind of natural perfume. And they marry and they have adventures. They wander together as husband and wife. Look at this beautiful artwork. There they are reflected upside down in the water as an older man and an older woman, married and happy. And then time passes, and time, an unbelievable amount of time. I watched as they anointed me with oils and spices, took away the parts of me that were inside, and filled me up with natron, cinnamon, and herbs. My eyes were closed and plugged. Beeswax filled my nose. They capped my nails with gold, studded with precious stones, bejeweled me from head to toe, and bound me up in linen, layer on layer. I was to be, for all eternity, well kept for him, meaning her lord. They made a mask painted to look like me. And then time passes. A huge amount of time. My noble one grew old and also left that life to lie at last beside me in the night that followed night. Time passed, and time, dark time and years, till we were found. Our bodies moved, placed in glass coffins under lights in quiet rooms. I rose above myself and watched as people came. They peered into the cases where we lay. They spoke, the words unknown to me, but understood as they were said. Was this a person? And this? And this? How foolish that they do not see how all things change, and so will they. It's a little kid that we're seeing, meant to drive home the point. How all things change, and so will they. 3,000 years from now, they will be dust and bones. I am the mummy, Heb Nefret, black as night, stretched as tight as leather on a drum. Once I was beautiful. Just lovely. Just fantastic. Recommended it all the time when it first came out. I loved it when I first read it. I just think it's fantastic. That's all. And then what is this next one that's jutting out so rudely? Oh, okay. All right. Great. This is by Cullen Murphy. This is a fantastic book. Just fantastic. I wonder if this... Oh, I do. Okay. I have a pub sheet in here. This came out in 2017. So before we knew each other, before we were talking to each other. And this is Cartoon County by Cullen Murphy. And it's a story of how in southwestern Connecticut, for a certain period of time, a certain group of years in the 20th century, a whole bunch of successful cartoonists who worked in the city and commuted to New York lived near each other. So you have Prince Valiant and Hagar the Horrible, and there's a whole long list of others. That most of which are forgotten now. Hi and Lois, the Nancy comic strip, which I don't think exists anymore. Rip Kirby, the Family Circus, Joe Palooka. They all these guys lived near each other in the same area. And Cullen Murphy is the son of one of those artists, and you would think that this would be the most rarefied kind of book, but he made it an amazing story. Just an amazing book. That does really what I love works of nonfiction history biography to do, which is to go to an area that doesn't look like it's promising and find the great story in there. I just love it when historians do that. Then we'll finish up the shelf with these two. These were finds. I couldn't leave them behind. I know this artwork backwards and forwards, but these things I'd never seen before. These are the Barry Windsor Smith archives. So the comic book artist, Barry Windsor Smith, his 2 volumes on Conan. The original run of Conan the Barbarian for Marvel Comics, Barry Windsor Smith did the first 20 issues, something like that, and his artwork drastically changed. It grew from, let me show you here, basically a Kirby pastiche, a Jack Kirby pastiche. It grew from that. That's the beginning of the first issue, to extremely ornate, beautiful work. Get another nice example here. Beautiful work at the end of the run that bears little or no resemblance to Kirby at all. Instead, I want to show you, a lot of these panels are, these things are just lovely. It's not a question of inking. It's a question of style, of kind of a very brooding, very ornate and beautiful style. Look at that. That is just lovely. Conan versus a bright red Stegosaurus. So I have these. I have Conan anthology volumes, Conan omnibus editions, Conan reprints of all kinds. And I have quite a few of these issues in 12-cent stapled comic books, which is when I was getting them originally. But I saw these two, and I'd never seen them before. I absolutely could not let them go. I could not pass them up. So there you go. That is our next shelf here, and it worked just fine. So I'm going to stay on this chair for as long as possible, and I'll stand up for a while. And then, well, sooner or later, we're going to have to get up on a footstool, but that's a few days from now. So I'll wrap this up for now. That's our library tour. We'll be back. We'll continue on tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.